Alrighty, so we just got a whole bunch of news of the skills and trait line updates that are coming with the balance patch of November 28th. Now, this is a pretty big deal because there's a lot of moving parts. I'm going to break it down each by the individual specs that were covered in today's stream. Now, as a note, I will always say this about any type of balance patch review. When looking at all these updates, some of the updates may change before we actually get to the live version. So take that with a grain of salt. All right, so looking at it like this, I'm excited to see what they do with the catalyst. And I'm interested to see more catalysts out there. I feel like the accessibility of getting I even say a hammer catalyst, but just a catalyst in general, because the elemental empowerment or the empowered empowerment, which was the main skill, was always a bugger to get and upkeep. And I know that turned off a lot of people. A lot of people didn't like it just because it was a pain in the neck. So it's interesting to see what they do with that. I like it. I like where they're going. I like where their head's at. Tornado still, that's kind of funny. The engineer, I'm actually very excited for, as someone who has played, we'll say, support scrapper, and I did it very poorly. It was not something that I did often. I healed a handful of strikes, but my crowning achievement was that I somehow managed my first time healing to somehow heal Bone Skinner. I like the changes that they're doing here. I think they're trying to make it a lot more viable in that sense as a support versus just kind of being a quickness mule that has to play their mini game. And specifically the blast gyro with the scrapper, that's pretty cool. I like that. Guardian, I am stoked to see the changes for the hammer. I love using hammers all the way across the board, and specifically when I get a chance to use it in, we'll say, PvE sense or even in PvP sense. Like, that's exciting to me. I'm very, very interested to see how well that plays out, because that's going to be something fun for me. The Mesmer, I like their focus. I like the idea of where they're going. They're trying to offer a little bit more of a, we'll say, a healing, supportive role in that sense. And again, I'm pretty sure that it's staff mirages that offer quickness for groups. So now maybe it'll be a support or a quick support mirage. Maybe that will be a thing. I don't know if they have enough just AoE healing or just general healing, but who knows? That could be a thing. Necromancer, just some changes across the board, small changes. I like the change to terror. With it being a Grandmaster trait and then also dealing more damage. That's awesome. I love using terror and fearing enemies. That's like, you're a Necromancer. That's what you want to do. The Ranger, all the different pets. Now, again, my Ranger's name is Fanatical Bearpaw, so I use a bear. I think I use a juvenile polar bear. So now it stuns an enemy in addition to chilling. So that's awesome. But man, there's a lot of different changes to all the pets. Their cooldowns are being reduced. And damage is increasing. It's going to be crazy for Rangers out there right now. The Revenant, and specifically the Herald, I'm expecting the Herald to be an absolute powerhouse with forceful persistence. I'm just taking a shot there and calling it, but the hammer changes specifically are going to be very, very interesting. All the we'll say just the coefficient changes and how hard it's going to be hitting. I hope it does well, and I hope it is a viable option, because I think that would be really cool. You have like a hammer herald that's able to just dish out a ton of damage from a crazy long distance. That's awesome. The Thief being able to change a lot of the pistol skills and increasing the capabilities of the pistol skill is really, really cool. I feel like that's going to cause a lot more people to want to play the Thief, and specifically because the pistols tend to be the safest option in any way, shape, or form, because you're usually at range. You can use shadow steps to jump around. That's going to be a lot of fun, especially with the outgoing damage that they're putting out. That's pretty cool. The changes to the staff, I don't know if that's going to be enough to be something that is chosen over the other, we'll say, weapons. I hope it is. I like the staff. I think it's cool. I don't know if it's enough. And lastly, the Warrior, the changes to the Berserker, which is always fun. I personally, when I do play my Warrior, I do just basically gravitate to the Berserker because I like it. It's the baseline Warrior, but angrier, so it's a lot more fun. But I'm interested to see how the arms side of things affect it. Because if, for example, you're playing Berserker and you're doing like a double axe, we'll say double axe greatsword Berserker, you might be able to squeeze out more damage with the arm straight line than, say, maybe you might be able to squeeze out a little bit more damage with the arm straight line versus the discipline trait line. I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But let's go ahead and look at the Elementalist to start. First, taking a look at the Elementalist, they are looking to lower the barrier of performance, we'll say, for the Catalyst. specifically looking at the Empowered Empowerment Grandmaster trait. Now, what's important to note about that particular trait is that once you hit 10 stacks, meaning that you have gained 10 stacks of elemental empowerment, you get essentially double the stat value. So the longer that you maintain it, the more effective that you are. What they're looking to do with this upcoming balance patch is to make the catalyst a little bit easier to get into. So as a baseline, they get 3 while they are in combat. As long as they have that in combat, which will basically be all the time in combat, their elemental empowerment stacks will always be 50% stronger, which is very, very powerful. And the way that it also looks is that if you are skilled enough and you do build up your elemental empowerment stacks all the way to max, then it does look like you'll also still get that double the percent bonus once you've reached max stacks. Pretty cool. It's a lot less punishing for the Catalyst player, especially if you've watched some of my favorite builds where I talk about the staff Catalyst basically, and having to use signet skills to maintain an easier time keeping elemental empowerment and empowered empowerment up. Excellently lowering the barrier to entry, something that I highly am looking forward to, and I'm hoping to see some more catalysts out there. So if you are a sword enjoyer, then you're going to really like what they're doing for PvP in World v World. It doesn't seem like they've really touched much of PvE, but in PvP, it looks like you're going to be getting some better coefficients, we'll say, better percentages based off of the Sword 3 skill, which you might more likely than not see like a Power Weaver in PvP utilizing the sword in non-Weaver specs, which is pretty cool. They want to see more swords out there and see it as more of a viable option. I think right now you see a lot more scepters more than anything. I feel like I see a lot more scepters main hand, but this could be a cool change. And also really important to note, and I thought that this was interesting, the elite skill Tornado, which turns you into a tornado, the cooldown is dropped from 150 seconds to only 1 minute in PvE. Now that's interesting. I don't know if it's going to have as much pliability as people would like to see. Unless they buffed up some of the damage that it could do, I don't necessarily still see that being chosen for the other elite specialization skills. I don't see that one necessarily jumping up to the top, but it could be fun for the memes. Moving on to the engineer, it looks like they're going to focus on the main weapons for the engineer, so the pistols and the rifle. One of the big things to note right out the gate, especially for the rifle, is that it's adding a little bit longer of a cast time for the net shot, but it's increasing the outgoing damage as well as applying vulnerability, which typically if you set up with a net shot, you can use it straight into a jump shot, which can do some crazy damage right there. And even more so now with the vulnerability. So that's pretty interesting. The jump shot also now has a brief evade period. So at the time of casting it, for the first half second of casting it, you will actually be evading all attacks, which is nice, especially as you're trying to escape. For the pistol, it looks like we went ahead and got some changes oriented around either the cast time or we'll say the power coefficients around those specific skills. Now Static Shot, which is your pistol 3, has a brief cooldown reduction in PvP and World v World, down for about 2 seconds. The windup time is 50% faster, so that's pretty nice across the board. Blowtorch has increased outgoing damage, power coefficient all the way up to 2 in PvE. That's a lot of burning. That's a lot of damage right there. Glue Shot got upgraded to a blast finisher, which is interesting. And the cooldown got severely reduced. Oh, down to a nearly 8-second reduction. That's incredible. The other big changes that they have talked about is specifically what they are looking for with the alchemy trait line as well as the scrapper, or we'll say trait line and just elite specialization. Specifically, they're looking to get rid of the autonomous aspects of the alchemy line. If you've done either player versus player, or I mean even in open world or any type of other PvE, the alchemy line is very automatic. A lot of their skills just automatically happen once a certain criteria has been met. So specifically looking at the transmute skill, which when you hit a certain amount of conditions, you'll automatically cleanse them and then turn them into boons, which was great for autonomous sake. You don't have to worry about it. It's a free condition cleanse passively. Now it's only used when you use a healing skill, which I imagine that would have like an internal cooldown for specifically if you're using like the med kit where you can jump in and out. But I think that's a little bit more engaging instead of it just constantly being like, yep, if A happens equals B. Now taking a look at Emergency Elixir, when this is activated on an elite skill now, it will grant you protection and a bit of a barrier instead of it just being automatic when your health falls below a certain period. Now this is actually a lot more engaging, and it could also be pretty interesting, especially when we look at, say, like the mortar kit, and then also looking at like transmute, because you can use your med kit or you can use a mortar kit to trigger both your heal skill as well as your elite skill and essentially have that on demand. That's pretty interesting. And also remember, you can pop that when you are in crowd control. You can swap weapon kits while you're in crowd control, so that could be something pretty interesting to see in PvP. So they're also looking to increase the capabilities of support scrapper, which is pretty interesting. Of course, now with system shocker, which means that when you were crowd controlling an enemy or disabling a foe, in that sense, you would grant yourself barrier. Now you'll be granting that barrier to allies, which is pretty interesting. Your function gyro will now grant protection when summoned. So it looks like they're really leaning into that healing scrapper, which is pretty cool. And then also the healing skill tool belt skill will now also grant protection as well. So they're really looking at really beefing up the capabilities of support scrappers. So this is pretty interesting. Blast Gyro getting a 25% cooldown reduction in PvE. That's pretty powerful. That's pretty strong. Because remember, if you were a quickness scrapper, you have to do blast finishers. You have to complete a blast finisher inside a combo field. So by doing this, essentially you have a faster alternative or a faster turnaround, specifically looking at keeping quickness up. So that's pretty cool. And then also looking at bypass coding, which is now down 10 seconds additionally, which is when you grant super speed to yourself and allies. So that's pretty cool. Some brief changes here over with the Mechanist. The Mechanist went ahead and had their relics actually activate based off of what the mech is doing. Now remember, the mech is a critical part to the Mechanist, so this kind of makes sense. But what's interesting is that these particular cooldowns are separate. Now the relics are going to be affecting the mech as well, but they are going to be separate from each other, meaning that when the mech activates the relic or fulfills the criteria for the relic, they will get that buff. The engineer will get it on their own when they fulfill that buff. So that's pretty cool. And then of course, Monk and Antitoxin, those are going to be shared with the engineer. So the mech and the engineer are not independent, they are joined together. So yeah, I could see that. All right, moving on to the Guardian. It looks like they're really trying to make the support Firebrand. This is something that happens in PvP. Now, if you don't PvP that often, you don't really see too many Firebrands. You'll see core support Guardians, sometimes core burn Guardians. You'll see a ton of Willbenders, occasional Dragon Hunters just cheesing it out. So this is an interesting look. And they're also trying to really buff out the hammer as a weapon that can be utilized in like more than just a meme way. Now, listen, I do a lot of memes, but this is pretty exciting. The big one coming here with Banish. The Banish now recharges Mighty Blow. Now, Mighty Blow is the big damage dealer for the Hammer Guardian. So when you use Banish, which essentially launches the enemy out, it will guarantee recharge Mighty Blow so that you can use it as a follow-up. Now, when you use Mighty Blow, it teleports you, shadow steps you to whatever target you just banished. So if you knock someone away, essentially, and Mighty Blow was off of cooldown, you could teleport towards them. Now, very interesting, is that Banish will guarantee hit with Mighty Blow. So your cooldown rotation could be Mighty Blow, hit him with the Banish, and then another Mighty Blow. Now think of this very much like in the sense it sounds like the Ranger Greatsword abilities. So like, so using Maul, Hilt Bash, and then Maul again, just because you can reset the cooldown very, very quickly and get a ton of burst damage out very, very fast. Reduce some of the casting time, which was nice. The hammer always just hit very, very slow. Power coefficient in PvE is up like 50%. That's pretty strong. That's really cool to see. Okay, so they reworked strengthened numbers to be a lesser Litany of Wrath. Now remember, Litany of Wrath is the heal skill that when utilized, your outgoing damage heals the Guardian for a little bit of the damage going out. So that's gonna be changing things up, but pretty sure that this is in the we'll say the defensive line, right? This is Valor? Yeah, so I don't know how often Valor may be taken. Maybe it could have a play. We'll see. Okay, and then Might of the Protector, that's another Valor one, but it increases the might duration in PvP and World v World. Dragon Hunter's getting some changes, a brief cooldown reduction to Shield of Courage. Hunter's Premonition, you gain Aegis when you use a trap skill, so that's interesting. mainly because piercing light, when the trap is triggered, it slows all enemies that are caught with inside of it. Now, that's actually really helpful, we'll say, to that cooldown reduction. So I don't know necessarily if the Aegis was really Defender's Dogma offering a bit of vitality. Okay, so that's really, really interesting. So Pure of Sight deals more damage the baseline further that the target is away from you. So at a baseline in PvP, it's going to be 10%. The only problem with this is that if someone jumps onto the Dragon Hunter, then essentially they're guaranteed to only have 5% increased outgoing damage. Now it's just up to 10%. So that's like 5% more damage at all times. So that's pretty strong. All right, looks like the Firebrand, it looks like they are decrease the page generation interval from 6 seconds down to 5, so you get more pages faster in PvP. Okay, so with this, this no longer has a internal cooldown. Now, I wonder if that's just isolated PvP or World v World. But in PvP, the quickness that it generates is up to 2 seconds, so that's pretty cool. That would be really good for some like burst comps, I suppose. Some more vulnerability stacks with Tome of Justice 1, Tome of Justice 5, 5 stacks of Might to nearby allies. That's pretty strong. But that looks like baseline. That doesn't look like it's just PvP. Pretty cool. Maybe some like Aegis or blocking. I'm not quite sure on that one, but that's interesting. That's a little bit more strategic. I guess the only problem with the Firebrand is how long it takes to set up everything. Bouncing between the skills and always having to wait for tomes. It's a lot more work in comparison to, say, like the other specs that could probably do things a little bit faster. Moving on down to the Mesmer. It looks like the Mesmer, they are going to try to aim for the support builds and improve the tool set there. And the bigger changes to Chaos and Inspiration, which were typically, Chaos was basically staff, Inspiration was like if you wanted to heal, basically, supportive capabilities. That's interesting. Oh no, they're changing some of the axes. So the axes the clones no longer perform an attack chain and instead just use Lacerating Chop. Okay, now Lacerating Chop just applies Bleeding and Torment for 3 seconds when used by a clone. Okay, so it still gets the stack of Torment specifically and a little bit of Bleeding. That's pretty good. I like that. The ammunition recharge down to 6 seconds in PvE and down to 10 seconds in PvP World v World. Now, as someone who thoroughly enjoys Mirage in PvP, especially Axe Mirage, that is huge. Same thing with Axe of Symmetry. Those both got their cooldowns reduced, both in PvE and PvP in World v World. Nice. All right, Prestige, which got a 10-second cooldown reduction. Now, remember, Prestige makes you go invisible for a duration, and then that's the Torch Offhand 4 ability. When you go stealth, and then when you come out of stealth, you burn all nearby enemies. So, happen a little bit faster. I guess they're trying to make it a little bit more viable for like a condition damage Mirage, like an Axe Mirage. Because I know one of the more popular PvE builds, and if you guys raid and do things like that, I'm sure that, please tell me down in the comments if I'm getting this right, because I don't raid really that often. But I'm pretty sure that the Staff Mirage was like the go-to if you were going to play a Mirage in any type of, we'll say, like instanced PvE. And I guess really one of the problems that the Mirage does kind of run into is specifically the lingering thoughts and dashing through the target, because it removes you. It isn't just, you're not stationary. And when you move around a lot, you could either miss boons or put yourself in danger. So, and then even Axis of Symmetry, it resets you to a new position. So I don't know about that. Metaphysical. All right, so here's some of the changes to the Chaos and Inspiration line. So looking at like Metaphysical Rejuvenation, you grant regeneration to allies after using your heal skill with a 10-second internal cooldown, which this one was only triggered when you fall below a certain HP. I think it's like 75% or something like that. Interesting. Illusionary Defense. Now this one was interesting because every time that you summon an illusion, it gets you a stack of just flat damage reduction across the board. Now they're just saying you grant protection to nearby allies when you use a Shatter skill. And the duration lasts longer based off of the Shatter clone. So it not only applying protection to yourself, but this could have been paired essentially with, say, for example, Illusionary Defense, so protection and Illusionary Defense, and you could have like a pretty decent shield wall. And that is through the Chaos line. Chaotic Transference, when you grant yourself a Chaos Aura, all nearby allies, or also nearby allies, will get it. And your Chaos Auras now also grant regeneration. Okay, so really trying to make the staff here, and I say the staff because the staff can on demand summon Chaos Auras, and you can jump through your Chaos Field. I believe it's your Null Field. Or not your Null Field, it's like Chaos Field or something like that. And that will grant you another Chaos Aura, Illusionary Membrane, Chaos Aura when you use Shatter 2. And Alka, okay, so you deal more condition damage when you have Chaos Aura, so that's pretty cool. Okay, so Bountiful Disillusionment. Disillusionment, that was difficult. So when you use your Shatter skill, mainly that one was with stability, but looks like you get additional boons when you use a Shatter skill, and those are given to your nearby allies. That's pretty cool. Distortion now grants stability instead of regeneration. Okay, I wonder how long that would last, though. How long does that stability last? Because when you use Distortion, you're invulnerable, so maybe it's like a 5-second stability. Or maybe it's based off of the amount of clones that you shatter. That'd be interesting. Yeah, and it looks like the rest of the changes here for the inspiration line look like they are focusing on improving the healing and supporting capabilities from what just basically seems like the inspiration line across the board. Healing and condition removal now also affect nearby allies. That's when you use a shatter skill, yeah. Huh, interesting. Compounding power no longer increases the condition damage attribute and instead is outgoing damage from conditions. Okay. So this doesn't give you the flat condition damage increase. This now will just deal more damage based off the conditions that you have. So by 2% per stack, it probably still goes up to 5. Malicious Sorcery was the Scepter ability. When you use the Scepter, it essentially attacks faster and allows you to summon more clones. The Scepter is used in that sense, so that'd be interesting. Inflict more confusion on the attacker, nice. No longer reduces cooldown of the axe skills, which we saw up top. That makes sense. And no longer generate phantasmal spinning axes with mirror strikes. Okay. So overall, it looks like, yeah, they really are hammering down on the big changes for support Mesmer, allowing it to heal, allowing it to cleanse a little bit more, have different ways of being more supportive in that sense. So that's pretty interesting. I like the changes, especially to Chaos, because Chaos is always just a fun trade line to use anyway, and it has more of an emphasis on the staff too, so I wonder if it's like a staff mirage change that could actually be more of a support now, perhaps. All right, now moving down to the Necromancer. Looks like they're trying to balance out some of the things that they want to do with the less utilized skills and traits, the things that don't necessarily get picked. Basically anything other than Reaper. We'll call it there. Yeah, so it looks like we have some just minor stat changes here. Skill also inflicts bleeding when striking an enemy. Signet of Vampirism, base heal is increased. Lifesteal is increased. That's a fun one to use. Shorter cooldown to Plague Signet in PvP. Also less conditions, one less condition drawn in. Okay, that makes sense. Reduces cooldown of Well of Power, which gives you Might. Oh, Terror being changed. It's now a Grandmaster tier, so it's in the last tier, but the base damage has been increased, and then the condition damage scaling is increased heavily. So this one, when you inflict fear onto a target, it deals damage to them now when you select it. Now it's going to be dealing a hefty amount of damage. Fear builds coming. I like it. Okay, so this trait, Soul Comprehension, grants some life force when entering Shroud based off of the number of active Death Carpus stacks that you have. So that's from the Death trait line, which is something that it's fun to use, but I don't really feel like a lot of people use it. I use it because I'm bad. But I like kind of the direction that they're heading with this, is that they're trying to make it a little bit more viable to use. And then, of course, with Deadly Strength now also increases condition damage based off of the stacks of Death's Carpus that you have. So that's pretty cool. I like that. Because right now it just grants power. All right, now moving down to the Reaper, increasing the base life steal from 130 to 138 to 172. Coefficient up to 1.25 or 0.0125. base healing. They're making this a little bit more accessible, that your shouts are healing you. Okay, all right, I like it. I like where you're going. Scourge, reduce the base barrier and the healing coefficient in PvP. Maybe the Scourges were too strong in PvP. Got to nerf them down. Better nerf Elementalist. And they nerfed Demonic Lore down 33% down to 20%. Okay, all right, fair enough. Take a look at the Ranger. Now, the Ranger has a lot, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but they've made a lot of changes to the pets, and they're trying to make the pets a little bit more, we'll say, better usage across the board. Essentially giving them either better damaging abilities, or we'll say more versatile abilities or useful abilities. So I won't go through all of them, but I do want to also make mention real quick that the basic attack for the pets now apply, can now be affected by quickness. So if they get quickness, then there you go. And then any of their skills that they use do not affect the pet that they come from. So say, for example, you have a pet that grants might to all nearby allies. It's not capped anymore, saying the pet and everyone else. Now it's just everyone else, and then the pet gets it anyway. Lots of changes all the way across the board. Cooldown reductions, damage tweaks, lots of buffs. Buff all the pets. Most of them, we'll say. Yeah, this is actually really interesting, because I wonder if this is really going to change. Now, I don't necessarily... and I've mentioned this before, I don't necessarily play the Ranger that often, but it's interesting to see all the different changes too. Maybe if you guys know more about the Ranger pets and like what is the best suited, tell me down in the comments. I'm interested to see what would work. Moving on to the Revenant. The Revenant looks like they're looking at the underperforming weapons, or the less chosen weapons. So short bow, shield, and hammer. Hammer, I feel like I never see. I've been told that it's in World v World, like Zergs, like you'll see a hammer there, but I don't know. I still haven't seen one there. I'll be honest with you. So the baseline really looks like they're making the hammer a lot stronger in PvE, or at least a decent amount stronger. So trying to make it a little bit more of a, we'll say, a viable option, because they improved all of the, we'll say, abilities. So like Field of the Mist, which is the projectile blocker, now grants Aegis on activation. Very nice. Power coefficient of Drop the Hammer, which is the big stun. Increased duration of the stun. Outgoing damage just for your hammer bolt. Coalesce Ruin. Yeah, I mean, that's all pretty big changes. I don't know if that would necessarily like turn some heads, maybe? I don't know. And again, Revenant's not one that I necessarily play that often, but I think I've only ever seen like 1 or 2 players actually use the hammer. So Envoy of Exuberance, so looking at the shield skills here, grants protection to allies at its impact point instead of when the projectile flies through them. So it's like, instead of the ground targeting being you have to aim it further away, you just aim it at the people, and then there you go. You'll get your protection. And the impact also grants Aegis to allies, so protection and Aegis. That's nice. That's always good. And it heals a little, and it moves faster. Okay. All right. Crystal Hibernation, heals allies in the radius around the user. So essentially you become invulnerable for a couple seconds, but now you're going to be healing allies. So that would be cool. It gives you a better option than just, I feel like any type of support Revenant would be just staff. Like that's staff and Centauri stance. Like, I mean, you might argue like, Herald, and using the Herald skills, but yeah, this is, that's a pretty interesting change. I'll give it that. The short bow gets changed with some of it's all basically their main skills being piercing. Everything pierces now, which is good. That'll help out with we'll say a little bit more versatility, because there's nothing worse than just having a group of enemies and you have to single each one of them down. I just want to hit everything and call it a day. Forceful Persistence, increasing the bonus damage from 15% to 20% in PvE. Increases the bonus damage per Herald upkeep skill to 7% from 5 in PvE. Ooh, power damage, Heralds incoming. Holy crap. So basically you use as many upkeep skills as you can, and then just start wailing away. So this is incredible. That's going to be crazy. Heart Piercer, that updates it. It's just going to increase the bleeding outgoing damage that you do, because the baseline skills are just going to be piercing anyway. Looks like it's the middle tier, I want to say, and now you are just reducing the recharge of energy meld instead of the endurance regeneration. Moving down to the thief, it looks like they are looking at the viability of the staff skills and some of the pistol skills, condition focus and PvE. So the vital shot and then the shadow strike. So the shadow strike is the pistol dagger combination weapon or combo attack, however you wish to call it. The torment stacks go up in PvE. The repeater effect duration goes from 4 seconds to 10 seconds. That's pretty cool. So when you use Shadow Strike, then you can use repeating or repeater and essentially just follow up with that. So you have a longer window to use that. Same in PvP and World v World. The effect stacks 1 to 3 in PvE and 1 to 2 in PvP, World v World. The effect now causes repeater skill to cost 1 less initiative, and 1 stack of the effect is consumed when using the repeater skill. Interesting. Unload the initiative cost from 5 down to 3 in PvE. Essentially, this is the dual wield attack using through or double pistol, and you could just blast enemies with that. That's going to be interesting. That's going to be really interesting. Bountiful Theft, essentially using your steal skill will grant you the boons. You'll steal the boons from the targets, but if they have no boons, you get some might, so that's good. And it's less wasteful, we'll say. The haste from 24 down to 20, PvP and PvE, World v World, nice. Blinding Powder down to 20 seconds. That's awesome. I love using Blinding Powder. That's like my favorite skill. Between that and Shadow Step, I feel like those are the skills that I choose. Those are the ones that I go with. Looking at some of the changes that they have for the Daredevil, specifically they're looking at the staff. They're changing how some of these work. So Punishing Strikes no longer reflects projectiles. Debilitating Arc. After using Debilitating Arc, you get a new skill called Helmet Breaker. Deal damage and inflict daze on the target. Pretty cool. Dust Strike now reflects projectile and strikes in an area around the Daredevil instead of the cone, or we'll say the thief instead of a frontal cone. That's pretty cool. A projectile, area of effect projectile, especially if you're like focusing on a target, and I'm saying in like PvP and World v World and something. Say you have the target stunned and you're getting peppered by an enemy, you can essentially just projectile reflect and be pretty good. Impact Strike now evades attacks, and the cooldown is increased by 5 seconds in PvP and World v World. I don't know if that's still any better though. So Impact Strike is the Daredevil elite skill. I like it. I do. I like it for the memes. It's fun. Especially when you're like you triple combo someone, and it's just awesome. And having the evades basically makes it unstoppable unless they use their stun break. I still don't know if that's like better than like we'll say like Dagger Storm or Basilisk Venom. I mean, hell, even Thieves Go. It's very meme-ish and niche. It could. You know what? I could be wrong. There could be a new meta that comes out of this. Every time I look at any of these, it's always something crazy is about to happen. Now moving on to the Warrior. They are looking to focus on keeping Berserk up more often in PvE encounters and making a little less punishing for falling out of Berserker mode. So the Berserker, of course, the Heart of Thorns elite specialization is very important to stay in Berserker, we'll say Berserk mode as long as possible, because you get the Primal Burst and your Start Wrecking Face and all that jazz. That's pretty cool. Improve some of the critical hit focus of the arm specializations, and tune some underperforming skills and trades. So yeah, it looks like they changed the Crushing Blow. That's for your, I believe that's Mace Offhand, Dolyak Signet. Vengeance, okay, yes. You get a guaranteed rally if you kill a target after you go down, and you use Vengeance and you get up and you kill a target, you get a 100% guaranteed rally. That's pretty good. Looking at some of the changes here for the arms trait line. Now the arms trait line was a little bit more focused around, like, we'll say mainly condition damage and dual wielding. And I'm glad to see these changes, because a lot of the weapons for the Warrior is just power. They mainly focus on power. I mean, you could argue like double swords and then even into the longbow. But you don't see those that often, unless, again, like the longbow you'll see in the World v World. Like I've seen that a handful of times. in my brief stints in there. Deep strikes, critical strike chance against bleeding enemies in PvE. That's a 5%, and then 10% in PvP and World v. World. Nice. Burst precision grants 100% critical strike chance and 150 ferocity for 2, 3, 4 seconds based off of the adrenaline used. Nice. Soldier's focus healing attribute got increased. Increases the protection duration from 2.5 to 4 seconds. And all the way up to 3 in PvP. Nice, I like it. Vengeful Return, this has been reworked and named Stalwart Focus. Increased incoming healing effectiveness and outgoing healing on enemy or allies. Very nice, very nice. Now this baseline right now just improves the chances that you'll get a return, a vengeful return after using vengeance after going down. So that's cool. I feel like that one was never used anyway. Heightened Focus, this trait will now allow also recharge all burst skills when it activates. Cooldown is reduced by 3 seconds. I think currently, what's it do? Currently it grants quickness when you hit a foe below a target. So it will still do that, but recharges all burst skills when it activates. So if you hit a target below 50%, you'll get quickness as well as recharging your burst skill ready to go again. Internal cooldown 15 to 12 seconds. Berserk increases the duration from 15 to 20 seconds. PvE reduces the cooldown from 15 to 8. Nice. I like it. Smash Brawler, which it baseline increases the duration of Berserk mode. So 5-second increase and a critical strike chance. Now it's going to be every time that you use a primal burst skill, it will extend your berserk phase by 2 additional seconds in PvE, 1 in PvP and World v. World when striking an enemy once per skill. Decapitate will extend berserk mode by 1 second in PvE. Nice. Okay. Heat the Soul reduces the cooldown quickness duration. The quickness duration from 4 to 3 seconds. Decapitate grants 2 seconds of quickness. Heat the Soul it just grants boons when you use quickness and fury when you use a burst skill. Okay, all right. Lots of cool stuff happening, a lot of fun changes coming up. And again, these are not all finalized, so just you are warned. Aside from that, if you are interested in learning a little bit more about Guild Wars 2 and the classes that we have, check out this video here. Offer you some pretty cool information in a very fast format. Aside from that, stay caffeinated, folks.